Command Sergeant Major Ted Copeland, Command Sergeant Major, United States Army Reserve. Command Sergeant Major John Sampa, Command Sergeant Major, Army National Guard. Command Sergeant Major Christopher Kepner, Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chief of the National Guard Bureau. Chaplain Brigadier General Thomas Soljan, Deputy Chief of Chaplains, United States Army. Major General Michael Howard, Commanding General, Joint Force Headquarters, National Capital Region, Military District of Washington. Lieutenant General Timothy Kadavy, Director, Army National Guard. Lieutenant General Charles Luckey, Chief, Army Reserve, Commanding General, United States Army Reserve Command. Sergeant Major of the Army, Daniel Daly. General John Murray, Commanding General, Army Futures Command. General Gustav Perna, Commanding General, United States Army Materiel Command. General Robert Brown, Commanding General, United States Army Pacific. General Stephen Townsend, Commanding General, United States Army Training and Doctrine Command. General James McConville, Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. General Joseph Lingell, Chief of the National Guard Bureau. The Honorable Mark Esper, Secretary of the Army. Phoebe Novakovic, Chairman, Association of the United States Army Council of Trustees. General Carter Ham, United States Army Retired, President and Chief Executive Officer, Association of the United States Army. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honored guest and keynote speaker, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General Mark Milley. Ladies and gentlemen, the Eisenhower Luncheon honored guests.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're thrilled that you are here for the Eisenhower Lunch. Please remain standing while Chaplain Soljan invokes the blessing, and remain standing for our national anthem.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in prayer. Almighty God, we gather here today to honor service and celebrate excellence. Excellence is demonstrated in so many ways in this world that you've created, but today we recognize it in the very unique and superlative efforts of those we honor with these prestigious awards. We are thankful for those who work to recruit and train, for those who provide and prepare soldiers ready to serve our nation. These NCOs that we recognize today are the very best of the best, who epitomize the selfless service we depend upon to make this Army great. Bless them in their work, even as we honor them for their excellence and service. Bless now our meal and this moment to your glory and our goodness. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched with so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare of the bursting in air, it broke through the night that a flag was still there, whose sailors that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the brave and the home of the brave.
Well, I don't know about you, that's my favorite song. Thank you, United States Army Band, Pershing Zone, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Welcome to the Dwight David Eisenhower Luncheon, recognizing the 16th Chief of Staff of the Army, who concluded his tour as Chief of Staff 70 years ago. The theme this year, Ready Today, More Lethal Tomorrow, is accompanied by what we at AUSA say, this is a professional development forum. There's no other event like this in the world and no other place to learn and enjoy more than 700 exhibitors from around the world participating in this year's event. So please enjoy your meal now and the fellowship of those gathered around you for this day 2 of our association's meeting. Enjoy your lunch. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. How about a round of applause for this great staff here at the Convention Center for a great meal? Thank you all. We've got a lot of great guests here in this full-up ballroom for today's luncheon. Let me recognize a couple of folks. We've got a number of other than Army uniforms present. So if you're from the United States Marine Corps, United States Air Force, United States Navy, United States Coast Guard, will you please stand up, Sergeant Major? All right. Let us thank you, General Engel. All right. Thank you. The Army recognizes and cherishes its role as part of the greatest joint force on the planet. We've got, I think, Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie has joined us for lunch today. Master Sergeant Petrie, Medal of Honor recipient. Master Sergeant Petrie. And I'm proud to announce to you that Master Sergeant Petrie serves as a trustee on the Council of Trustees of our association. Thank you very, very much for that service. You know, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Vice Chief, all are great leaders, but those great leaders need some non-commissioned officer supervision. So if I could ask all Sergeants Major and Command Sergeants Major, please stand and let us thank you for the excellent leadership you provide. Could I ask all those soldiers and all those non-commissioned officers who have been selected by their units and their home stations as the non-commissioned officers and soldiers of the year, the Career Counselors of the Year, Drill Sergeants of the Year, Recruiters of the Year, those soldiers of extraordinary excellence. Would you please stand so that we may thank you for your extraordinary accomplishments? That's a lot of excellence. We're certainly honored today also to have many, many representatives of the United States allies and partners from around the world. So for our allies and partners, please let us thank you for your participation. That's right. You know, for many years now, it's been our custom at the Eisenhower Luncheon to honor the soldiers of excellence. And so may I invite General Milley and Sergeant Major of the Army Daly, would you please come to the front of the podium for the awards presentation.
Would the recipient of the Stephen Ailes Ralph Haynes Jr. Award please come to the stage? The Stephen Ailes Ralph Haynes Jr. Award is presented annually by the Department of the Army to the outstanding drill sergeant of the U.S. Army and U.S. Army Reserve. This year, outstanding drill sergeants representing all the United States Army training centers competed in a headquarters U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command competition for this coveted award. The 2018 Army Drill Sergeant of the Year is Sergeant Devin Crawford, 3rd Battalion, 334th Regiment, 1st Training Brigade, 95th Division, 108th Training Command, United States Army Reserve. Would the recipients of the General Maxwell Thurman Recruiting Excellence Award please come to the stage? The General Maxwell Thurman Recruiting Excellence Award is given each year to the active duty, Army National Guard, and U.S. Army Reserve Recruiters of the Year. During General Thurman's tenure as commander of the U.S. Army Recruiting Command, he significantly improved the quality of Army enlistees and helped create the professional Army of today. And he played a key role in fostering the public's positive perceptions of America's Army and its great soldiers. His influence left a mark on Army recruiting and set high standards for today's Army recruiters. The non-commissioned officers selected as the top Army recruiters for 2018. The United States Army Recruiter of the Year is Staff Sergeant Billy Getchy, Pueblo Recruiting Station, Denver Recruiting Battalion, 5th Recruiting Brigade. The United States Army National Guard Recruiter and Retention Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year is Sergeant Deborah Elliott, A Company, Recruiting and Retention Battalion, Colorado Army National Guard. The United States Army Reserve Recruiter of the Year is Sergeant First Class Jessica Schrecker, Lubbock Recruiting Station, Amarillo Recruiting Company, Oklahoma City Recruiting Battalion, 5th Recruiting Brigade. Would the recipients of the Retention in Excellence Award please come to the stage? The Excellence in Retention Award is given each year to the active and reserve component Career Counselors of the Year. Retaining the very best soldiers is critical to the Army's mission of growing and developing leaders for the future. Career counselors support Army commanders by identifying and counseling soldiers and non-commissioned officers of their value to the force and potential to serve in positions of increased responsibility in today's and tomorrow's complex world. The non-commissioned officers selected as the top Army career counselors for 2018. The Active Army Career Counselor of the Year is Sergeant First Class Amy K. Fields, 21st Special Troops Battalion, 21st Theater Sustainment Command, Germany. The Army Reserve Component Career Counselor of the Year is Sergeant First Class Joseph M. Compton, Jr., Headquarters Support Company, Headquarters and Headquarters Battalion, 3 Corps, Fort Hood, Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for all of our outstanding non-commissioned officers.
What an extraordinary group of non-commissioned officers. Certainly that makes the Army very, very proud. Those of you who have been coming here for a number of years recognize that the Dwight David Eisenhower Luncheon is the opportunity for the Chief of Staff of the Army to address not just this audience, but to address the Army and indeed the nation. It is also abundantly clear to those of you who follow such things that Chiefs of Staff of the United States Army serve a statutory 4-year tour. And if you're counting, you might recognize that this is General Milley's 4th opportunity to address this luncheon. So, Chief, on behalf of all of us, I just want to thank you on behalf of your association. We admire you, we love you, we thank you for all that you have done. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to a short video.
We, the United States Army, as part of the Joint Force, we exist for a singular purpose and none other. And that is to fight and win wars in defense of the United States of America. We're the United States Army, and we don't shrink from tall orders. We're the United States Army, and our enemies need to know that these colors don't run from tough fights. We will adapt and we will evolve our current force, but in the end, we will win. That much I can tell our enemies that they can take it to the bank. We all need to remember that we as Americans, we only have a lease on liberty. We do not have a deed to it. So each generation has to be prepared to fight in order to preserve that idea and pass it on to the next generation. And our enemies, no matter where they are on this earth, they need to know that the United States Army will bear any burden and meet any hardship to ensure that this experiment in liberty that we call America shall not perish from this earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to present to you the 39th Chief of Staff of the United States Army, General Mark A. Milley.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, Carter, I think really what they're applauding is this is my last speech. Pretty sure. In fact, my wife, a native of Pennsylvania, she said, hey, look, this is your 4th, your last speech. Keep it short, please. Lay off Pennsylvania. Both the Secretary of the Army and the Sergeant Major of the Army are from Pennsylvania. Lay off all that Pennsylvania stuff, and please do not mention the Red Sox Nation. That's what she said. She just told me that, in fact. So I won't. I won't mention 16-1 last night. I'm not going to mention that. I'm not going to mention that at 41 years old, there's a quarterback up in the Holy Land that is still the best in the world. I'm not going to mention that. I'm not going to mention that the Boston Bruins Marchand gave some old-time hockey to the Washington Capitals, Lars Eller, the other night, if you happen to see that one. Go Google it. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that Boston rules. I'm not going to do that. So I promise. I think Pennsylvania is a wonderful state. It's sort of part of the Union. I think that Pittsburgh might have a football team. They damn sure don't have a hockey team. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles in this fake news win from last year will be avenged. So I'm okay. I'm not going to say anything about Pennsylvania or Boston. I won't. I promise, Holly, I won't do that. Hey, thanks for everybody for being here. Thanks, Carter Ham, for doing this every single year, making a great professional development opportunity for the entire Army with 30,000 people here this year. Thanks, and a big round of applause for Carter Ham, please. And I want to also single out two folks. I call one of them Kraft. I call the other Brady. I'm Belichick, right? So Kraft is Secretary Esper. So we have the 23rd Secretary of the Army right over here. He's sort of the CEO, the owner of the team kind of thing. We're very, very blessed with having a combat veteran of the 101st Airborne Division as our Secretary of the Army. He's leading the way into the future. He's passionate about our Army. He loves our Army. And we are very, very fortunate to have you as the 23rd Secretary, and I'm very fortunate to have you as my wingman. So thank you so much, Secretary. And the MVP of the team has got to be the young guy with the haircut, Ryan McCarthy. Where are you at, Ryan? Here's the Tom Brady of the team right here. He's the guy who you give him the ball, gets it in the end zone, throws the pass. He's an amazing individual. He came to us. We're so lucky to have him. I've known him for years. If there's any one single individual who's responsible for Army Futures Command, it is Ryan McCarthy. A lot of people had a lot to do with it, but Ryan made it happen and got it in the end zone. So thank you, Undersecretary, for what you do. And then I'm blessed because there's another guy from Boston who's also my wingman, and Jim McConville, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. I call him Gronk. Gronk just grinds it out every day and puts that ball in the end zone. So thank you, Gronk, for doing it. And he looks like Gronk. Look at him. And where's the Sergeant Major of the Army in the greens? Look at you. Where you at? Stand up there, Ranger. Do we have the greatest Sergeant Major in the Army ever? Look at him. The only thing wrong is he does happen to come from that same state, but we'll leave that alone. So I do want to thank members of Congress. In particular, I want to thank Anthony Brown, Tony Brown. He's a congressman from Maryland. He has, unfortunately, the distinction of being born in New York, so that doesn't work for you, but thank you so much for being here and representing all of the Congress, all 535 members of our board of directors. It's an amazing group. I know there's controversy every single day out there, but without the United States Congress and the congressional staff that makes it happen, the Army wouldn't have a nickel. It is the constitutional responsibility of the Congress to raise armies and maintain navies, and that's exactly what they did, and they passed this budget, so thank you so much and all the other members for your continued support. We have a lot of industry partners here today, and I want to thank all of them for what you do. You are really the forge of the nation, the industrial base of our nation. And without you, we wouldn't be as strong as we are. So thanks to all our industry partners, and thanks to all the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard that are here. I did see a Marine. Where's my Marine? Sergeant Major, how are you? Semper Fi. Are you the only Marine in the room? That's good. A very brave man right there. Very good. Thank you. Anybody from the Navy in here? Huh? They didn't want to come now. Okay. 2 in a row, so they can't handle it. All right, so, but I do want to thank all of our joint partners for being here. And I also know that we have 82 nations represented here today with all of the allied attachés and representatives and my counterparts, the chiefs of staff, et cetera, are all here. So thank you all, because the Army doesn't fight alone. We fight with allies and partners. And having 50% of the United Nations represented in this room today speaks volumes about the power of attractiveness that the United States still retains on the global scene. So thank you so much, all of our allies and partners. And Leroy, thank you. Master Sergeant Leroy Petrie. I've gotten to know him over the years now, and what a great American hero he is and his contribution. Carter Ham called him out just a second ago, but Leroy, I'd like you to stand up once more as a Congressional Medal of Honor winner so that we can all give you a round of applause and play honor to you. And I would like to also acknowledge all the spouses that are here, spouses of soldiers, whether your husband or wife is here right now or not. I would just ask that all the spouses representing all the families of this great organization we call the United States Army, if you could all just stand for a moment so that we can acknowledge and praise you. And all 8 that stood up are from Pennsylvania, so I'm not sure what that says. And then finally, I would like to acknowledge Gold Star families that are here, and I had an opportunity a week or so ago to participate in a variety of ceremonies with them at Arlington National Cemetery. And they are remarkable people. They are remarkable men and women who have lost all in this war and in past wars. And I just want to acknowledge and thank to all the Gold Star families for their resilience and their patriotism and their continued sacrifice and service to our nation. Last week, just a couple of days ago, I was at Dover Air Force Base bringing home the remains of Sergeant Slape, North Carolina National Guard Explosive Ordnance Disposal soldier who was killed in action in southern Afghanistan in the vicinity of Fob Dwyer while he was clearing an IED minefield. And that same week, we honored Staff Sergeant Scherer with the Congressional Medal of Honor, who was incredible in his actions 10 years ago, saving the lives of his fellow 3rd Special Forces Group soldiers, the Green Berets, and their counterpart Afghan commandos in an intense action against overwhelming odds in the mountains of Afghanistan. Just 48 hours ago, we lost Lieutenant General Tom Vandal to an aggressive disease that was diagnosed as he took his retirement physical. Tom served nearly 4 decades in peace and war, with the last 5 years consecutively in Korea, culminating as the commanding general of 8th Army, standing watch on the DMZ. Amid all the headline news, it seems like we hardly notice that we are still a nation at war in some places, and in others we're still preventing war. And sometimes we lose sight of the heroes like Slape and Scherer and Vandal that make freedom possible. Just a few days ago, October 7th, we marked the 17th anniversary of our counterattack into Afghanistan to destroy the enemies of our country that brutally attacked us at the Twin Towers in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in that Pennsylvania field, murdering almost 3,000 fellow Americans and citizens of many other countries. 17 years later, we have suffered about 58,000 killed and wounded, most of them Army soldiers, in a war that continues. And it is well for us to remember that today, as we sit here today, 180,000 soldiers stand as sentinels in 140 countries on freedom's frontier. So I ask all of you, all of us here today, to never forget our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines, who have given their all, who have given their tomorrows for our todays, who ask for little and yet give so much. I ask that all of us never break faith with them, never break faith with Slape and Scherer and Vandal. And we give meaning. We give meaning to their sacrifice if we ensure those that follow in their footsteps are ready for the challenges ahead. I've talked about a lot of things from this podium in the last 3 years, and we've talked about the myths of war, the falsehoods that wars will be short and that wars can be won from afar with standoff weapons at little cost in American blood, or that armies are easy to regenerate. We talked about the rapidly changing character of war as we move into the future, that decision in war is shifting from the open terrain of plains and deserts to highly complex urban terrain, and that emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, and hypersonics will have a fundamental impact on how we fight. We talked about how wars are fundamentally a political act conducted by humans to impose their will, their political will, on the opponent, and that decision in war is always ultimately won on the ground where humans live, and therefore the need for highly effective ground forces is critical to our nation's defense. And we've talked consistently about the challenges in the international geopolitical environment with the reemergence of great power competition, highlighted for all to see in our national defense strategy, written personally by SecDef Mattis. In fact, we are in the midst right now of witnessing the greatest shift in world economic power to occur in over 5 centuries as the global financial center of gravity moves from the Atlantic Rim to the Pacific Rim, with military power sure to follow. And finally, we acknowledged that we recognize armies and indeed navies, Marines, and Air Forces are very expensive to raise and maintain. But the only thing more expensive than preventing a war is actually fighting a war. And the only thing more expensive than fighting a war is losing a war. And war is a very unforgiving act to those not prepared. And unfortunately, war has not gone away. It's not gone away from the human experience. And maybe someday it will, but not likely in our lifetimes. In fact, it is clear, to me at least, that the faint clouds of a coming storm are visible on the horizon. And our first duty to our soldiers and our nation is readiness. Readiness today and readiness tomorrow. To prepare for that storm, SecDef Mattis is clear and unambiguous in his guidance to all of us. He charges us to be lethal above all else. And our adversaries should make no mistake that we, the Army, and we, the entire U.S. military, are incredibly capable today, and it will be catastrophic on their part to take us on. As Secretary Mattis said recently, it would be much better for them, for our enemies, if they were to do business with our Department of State instead of doing business with the Department of Defense. As our capability is only going to increase in the future, America's Army is and always will be the most capable and lethal ground force in the world. And our Army exists, as you just saw in the video, for a single and sole purpose: to fight and win the nation's wars as part of the joint force. Yes, we can do other things. We can do hurricane relief, as we've done this year and are likely to do later in this week. And we've done that year in and year out. And we can help with terrible earthquakes like what we saw in Haiti. We can contain outbreaks of disease like we did in West Africa with Ebola. We can conduct peacekeeping operations and many, many other tasks. But our primary reason for being is to destroy the enemies of our country in ground combat. And that means being ready. Ready now, ready in 2 hours, ready tomorrow, next week, next year. Ready today, more lethal tomorrow. Readiness means we are trained in combined arms multi-domain operations. We operate in the deserts and in the plains and in the mountains and the jungles, the forests. And most importantly, we are currently optimizing for dense, highly complex urban battles of the future. Readiness means that we have the very best equipment that America can produce, a technological edge unmatched by our opponent, and that we have it in sufficient quantities, and it's ready, maintained, and operationally effective. Most importantly, it means that we have the right people who are psychologically and intellectually prepared to outthink, outfox, and outlast our enemy with rapidly adaptive organizations and tactics. It means that we are physically hardened to endure unspeakable stress and hardship under the most brutal conditions, day after day, month after month. Soldiers that may bend but will never break against overwhelming odds in the chaos and unforgiving violence of close quarters combat. You know, 65 years ago this year, combat operations concluded as the Korean War entered a ceasefire. That was July 1953. That war started 3 years earlier, when about 80,000 North Korean soldiers attacked south across the 38th parallel and very nearly succeeded in defeating South Korean and U.S. forces on the peninsula. Many authors have studied the Korean War, Fehrenbach, Hansen, Appelman, and many others. It doesn't matter which one. The conclusions are all the same. The truth is, we weren't ready to fight in Korea. Only 5 short years after we defeated the combined power of Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and Fascist Italy in World War II. 5,968 American soldiers were seriously wounded or killed in action in the first month of combat on the Korean Peninsula, while we scrambled to understand what was going on and get fully ready to fight. To put that in perspective, there's about 3,000 people in this room right now. So twice as many people as you see around you. Soldiers, fathers, brothers, sons, all gone. And that's in addition to 44,000 South Korean soldiers that were killed in the same time period, and some unknown number of civilians. How many of those soldiers, how many of those civilians would have lived if we had been truly ready? We had units going into combat at 60% authorized strength, units deployed with obsolete equipment and just some with no equipment at all. The 24th ID went into Korea in the summer 1950, armed with only 2.36 rockets. And we knew that those weapons were obsolete and couldn't destroy the Russian T-34 tanks the North Koreans were then using. When fired, they just bounced off, doing little or no damage. In one of the very first battles, one U.S. platoon reported that they had fired 22 rockets into those T-34 tanks at close range and had absolutely no effect. We brought recoilless rifles in another platoon only to find out there were only 6 rounds to fire. Soldiers all across the board had less than their basic load of ammunition for their rifles and their machine guns. Units had 0 anti-tank mines. So North Korean formations rolled unimpeded right down all of the high-speed avenues approach and got into the rear areas of the South Korean forces and the American forces. Communication equipment was old and unreliable, and units were overrun because their radios failed and they couldn't coordinate indirect fires or receive orders to withdraw. Units had not trained together to adequate levels and were physically unprepared for the harsh realities and the intense physical and emotional stress of mobile combat. 139,858 soldiers were wounded or killed in action during the course of the Korean War. It did not need to be that way. We must not allow ourselves to ever put America's sons and daughters in that situation again. Korea is often called the forgotten war. But we in the United States Army, we can't afford to forget that we came within 30 miles of being pushed into the ocean in 1950. Memory loss of failing to prepare for war, that is not our option. Weakness invites aggression, invites disaster, death, and defeat. It is only through a strong and ready Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines that the peace is preserved. And in the event of war, it is only through strength that victory is won. Today, we face threats that are serious and growing, and we must be ready for conflict that requires us to go to war in a very short period of time. We cannot rely on an extended period of time to get ready and deploy our forces like we did in the First and Second Gulf Wars. It worked. It worked against Saddam Hussein's army, but it may not work the next time. We can't fall into the trap of thinking that unready units can be prepared in time of crisis or that our deployment pipelines will be uncontested. That is fantasy, pure fantasy, and not readiness. Our adversaries are preparing for the exact opposite. They're building forces to strike quickly if they deem it is in their interest. China and Russia are spending tremendous treasure and talent to equal or surpass U.S. military capability. Russia continues to occupy Crimea and Ukraine, as well as lands in Georgia and Moldova, in violation of international law. Russia continues to foster conflict between their neighbors like Azerbaijan and Armenia, and to intimidate Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, all of whom are NATO allies. They are increasingly active in cyberspace to sow discord and division in Europe and the United States, as a brief glance at the news will tell. They have actively worked to undermine our efforts in almost every region of the globe. And just last month, Russia, in concert with the Chinese forces, conducted its largest military exercise since 1981, involving over 250,000 troops, 50,000 vehicles, and thousands of aircraft. In the last year, China continued to develop strategically significant military facilities on man-made islands in the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. China is steadily expanding its influence in the Mideast, Africa, and Latin America in a quest for resources to fuel their economy and build their military to achieve regional hegemony and global parity by mid-century. Since last year, Iran has worked to build increasingly accurate and lethal ballistic missiles, representing an increased threat to our regional friends and allies, and continues to provide financial and material support to terrorist groups throughout the Middle East and elsewhere. Violent extremist groups continue to be a threat. Although ISIS has lost most of the territory it once held in Syria and Iraq, its networks and ideology are not yet dead. Al-Qaeda continues along the Afghan-Pak border and around the Middle East, looking to export its fanatical ideas and promote its violence. The situation in North Korea does show some positive sign. We have a lot of work ahead and must remain vigilant with our allies, Japan and South Korea, in support of our diplomatic efforts that everyone in this room is hoping will succeed. So the bottom line is, we, the United States Army, must retain our focus on readiness. Readiness to fight near-peer nation states or terrorists and guerrillas. We do not have the luxury of doing anything less. If we lose focus on readiness, we risk deterrence will fail, or more significantly, we risk losing a war. Right now, today, our Army is strong and getting stronger. We are trending positively in all the right direction. Commanders and leaders throughout the Army are building readiness, and we are using resources that Congress and the American people have given us to build increasingly lethal and capable formations. To make sure we can do that, we will continue to grow the Army over the next several years and adapt our talent management practices to attract and retain the best and the brightest with the skills we need. We have to continue to grow the force, and we will do that without compromising quality for quantity. Our objective is that all of our operational units will be filled to a minimum of 90% authorized strength this year, 100% strength by 2021, and 105% strength no later than 2023, in order to ensure that we have units fully manned and ready to respond when called. We're also issuing manning guidance to fill critical institutional functions like observer controller trainers at the training centers, recruiters and drill sergeants, and platform instructors. They will all be filled at 100% strength by the end of this year. We cannot sacrifice the institutional force for the operational force. Both must be fully manned. We've reduced the number of non-deployable soldiers in our formations. In 2015, when I became the Chief of Staff, we had a readiness crippling 153,000 non-deployable soldiers across the Army. That was 15% of our force, the equivalent of a field army in World War II. But through your hard work, through our leaders and commanders' hard work and their focus, that number is now much lower, at 6 to 7%, and we're on track to achieve 5% this year. That's thousands of soldiers back in our formations ready to deploy and support worldwide contingency operations. The growth in our effective end strength will be through a combination of recruiting, retention, and reducing our non-deployables, and we will continue to target that growth at filling holes in the existing force structure. We've also begun implementation of the new Army fitness test to fundamentally improve the fitness culture, reduce injuries, and most importantly, increase the probability that a soldier will survive on a battlefield of the future. This test is 80% correlated to combat tasks and is gender and age neutral because the enemy does not distinguish male from female, nor do they care if you're 25 or 45. They will kill you regardless. So our fitness standards must be focused on the skills needed to fight and sustain close combat, where physical toughness and endurance will be tested to the extremes of human capability. Additionally, we're rebalancing our force structure to prepare for future combat with increased flexibility and firepower by converting existing BCTs to create a 15th and a 16th Armored Brigade Combat Team. And we're developing plans for a 17th Armored Brigade Combat Team. We are quickly reducing administrative requirements to unburden commanders and allow them to focus on the training of their units. We've extended one-station unit training from 14 weeks to 22 weeks, and we're getting ready to do the same for armor and other branches. We've deployed SFAB number 1 to Afghanistan and are training and preparing SFAB number 2 and building SFABs 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the next 24 months in order to buy back readiness for our brigade combat teams currently doing those advisory missions overseas. In the National Guard and Reserves, we've increased training days for select units to improve their training and also increase the number of Guard units going through the training centers. And we've improved the way we train at the training center by adding realism and rigor at NTC, JRTC, and JMRC. The distances traveled, the hours awake, the command post jumps, the obstacles breached, the live fires conducted, increased skill of the OPFOR indirect fire attacks, the OPFOR's guerrilla and terrorist attacks, the OPFOR's use of electronic warfare and cyber, rotary wing and fixed wing attack, ballistic missile attack, chemical and biological attack, and relentless enemy offensive infantry and armor combined arms attacks. All of that and more has increased the intensity and capacity of our training centers. The objective is to intentionally increase the stress on ourselves so we fight our first battle in training and not in actual combat, and so that our soldiers come home from such an emotionally grueling and physically grueling experience that their lower lips were quivering and you never forgot the lessons that you learned there. It's hard at the CTCs now. Yes, it's hard, but its purpose is to keep you alive and effective on a future battlefield against a very capable enemy committed to his cause. And Army Materiel Command continues to improve our equipping with their increased flow of spare parts, inventory and supply availability management, ammunition stockpiles in CONUS and overseas, and improved depot maintenance, increased readiness, and pre-post stocks around the world. And we recognize we don't fight alone, but as part of a joint and combined force with the Navy, Air Force, Marines, and our allies. And we've worked hard to improve our interoperability through 58 multinational and joint exercises involving over 110,000 partner nation soldiers, not including our actual combat operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, with over 50 allied partners. In short, America's Army has stopped the downward slide in readiness. America's Army is on the mend after nearly 2 decades of continuous combat operations, and we are getting stronger by the month in manning and training, equipping, and leader development. But we cannot stop, not even pause, because the future will be here in the blink of an eye, and we must be prepared for whatever lies ahead. As SecDef Mattis told us in the National Defense Strategy, he said, the American military has no preordained right to victory on the battlefield. So the key to future victory for us lays in the foundation of modernization now. Building our future forces, not a week-long, a month-long, or even a year-long process. In fact, we started on that path 3 years ago with an intensive study into the future operating environment conducted by TRADOC, and then Senator McCain motivated a small group of us to overhaul our Army acquisition, procurement, and modernization effort. We analyzed the operating environment, we held the mirror up to our internal processes and organization, and recognized we needed to change radically and fast, or we risked losing the next war. So over the next 2 years, a small group of Army leaders, including the current Commander of Futures Command, Mike Murray, and Ed Cardone, and Undersecretary McCarthy, the Vice, the Secretary of the Army, and many others, with some outside help, designed how we should organize and fight for the future. To modernize the Army is going to take years, but that journey has begun in earnest. We've established a clear set of modernization priorities that leverages the American way of war with an emphasis on overwhelming fires and rapid movement with effective mission command while protecting the most lethal weapon on the battlefield, the American soldier. Last year, we organized our institutional structure to modernize with the creation of cross-functional teams for each of our 6 priorities. And this year, we established Army Futures Command in the innovation hub of Austin, Texas, with a laser focus on providing unity of command for the modernization effort, developing concepts, identifying requirements, innovating solutions, and rapidly delivering the right equipment at the right time to our soldiers. Army Futures Command was designed and has now been positioned to cooperate and collaborate in unprecedented ways with American private sector industry and academia to assure that American ground forces prevail in the next war. We are clear-eyed. We are clear-eyed on what we need to do, and we are committed to the march. But modernizing our equipment isn't the only thing we have to do in our march to the future. Our competitors and potential adversaries have been busy studying the American way of war for many years, and we are witnessing a fundamental change, as noted, in the character of war. So we have to adapt the American way of war to the unique reality of future combat in highly dense urban areas with rapidly emerging technologies, along with increased contested space and cyber domains. So we have been hard at work developing a new American way of war, and we call it multi-domain operations, that leverages our traditional strengths, it mitigates our vulnerabilities, and simultaneously presents the enemy with multiple complex tactical, operational, and strategic dilemmas to overwhelm their ability to effectively fight. Wars are won on the offense, and we intend to seize and maintain the initiative to gain positions of advantage and breach his defenses in depth through combined arms maneuver in all domains and operate at speeds far faster than the enemy can react. We have completed our first iteration in the Pacific of multi-domain operations as part of a broader U.S. joint doctrinal evolution. Multi-domain operations use the principles of mass, fires, and movement, along with sustainment and protection and a network of mission command to disrupt, penetrate, disintegrate, and exploit the enemy's anti-access systems and bring their fielded forces to operational paralysis. Our concept envisions a new calibrated force posture to execute SecDef Mattis's dynamic force employment concept around the globe. New multi-domain formations will be built in strategically important locations, and convergence of mutually supporting multi-domain joint capabilities in time and space to shift from battles of attrition to battles of cognition, where we think, direct, and act at speeds the enemy cannot match in order to achieve a perfect harmony of intense violence that he cannot handle. In short, multi-domain operations is about winning on tomorrow's battlefield by simultaneously achieving overwhelming battlefield dominance and overmatch in all 5 domains of warfare by ground formations in combination with the joint force and international partners. This new concept is in the process of development now and involves extensive field testing that is ongoing throughout the joint force in CONUS and in both Asia and Europe. With continued testing and experimentation, this concept will become the basis for U.S. Army and U.S. joint doctrine in just a few years. All of our soldiers, leaders, families, and civilians have done great work over the last 3 years, turning around what was becoming a very dangerous situation and reversing negative trends. But our progress is fragile. We still have much work to do. The budgets are set for 19 and 20. Our Congress got it done, and they gave us what we asked for in terms of passing a budget and passing it on time. But we will continue to need stable, predictable funding to sustain our gains and readiness to modernize our force and take care of our soldiers and families. And there's no doubt we are on the right path. But if we are not careful, we can take the wrong turn and start back down the road toward the U.S. Army in the early days of the Korean War. And we know where that road leads, a road that has already been traveled many times before in American history, a road littered with needless death and tragic consequences. We don't want to relearn those same lessons again in a future conflict, paying the butcher's bill with the blood of our sons and daughters, our grandchildren, or those yet unborn. 6 years after the war to end all wars concluded, a young man was born in Somerville, Massachusetts in 1924. He did not know that Lenin was buried and Stalin began his terror-filled dictatorship. He did not know that the month prior to his birth, the 407-year-old last caliphate of the Ottoman Empire was abolished, creating ripple effects that are felt to this day. He was not aware that the same month of his birth that fascists had won election in Italy with 2/3 of the vote. And he certainly didn't know a little-known German politician named Adolf Hitler was jailed for his failed beer hall push, only to be released 9 months later. He had no idea and didn't understand the intricacies of the failed Versailles Peace Treaty or the rise of Nazi Germany that was happening while he was still a toddler. He'd never heard of the 1868 Meiji Restitution or the rise of an aggressive imperial Japan that began just 56 years before his birth. He was only 5 years old when the stock market collapsed in 1929 and sent the world into a global depression that unleashed protectionist and nationalist forces that would soon lead to the greatest conflict in human history, a war that cost over 100 million dead. Yet, when he was 20 years old, in the summer of 1944, he hit the beach at Saipan with the 4th Marine Division in the Central Pacific, while his brother was hitting the beach at Normandy on the other side of the world. And his mother cared for her 8 other children at home, praying there would be a stop to the crazy world engulfed in flames. He did not know the decision makers of the day and certainly had no influence. And he and his brother, all they could do was fight for their country in hopes to make a better world for those that came after him. That young man was my father. And we today, we can do better. We can do better than the decision makers of his day, who sent an army off to war in 1942 unprepared for the hardships of combat in the Kasserine Pass, or a Navy who struggled in the various early battles throughout the Pacific and the South China Seas. We can do better than the leaders who sent unprepared troops into Korea in 1950, or the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, or nearly every war America's ever fought. The next 10, 20, 30 years, what awaits a child born today? We obviously can't be certain. But we must not wait to prepare. We can now see very clearly the aggression of states aiming to do us harm. We can now see the warning flags fluttering and the faint outlines of storm clouds gathering. It has been 39 years since Deng Xiaoping launched his reforms in 1979, leading directly to increase Chinese military capability at a scale and scope rarely seen in world history. And it's been only a few years since Russian military aggression against Georgia and Ukraine. The international order put in place 7 decades ago is under stress, and where all this leads is not yet clear. But what is clear are the clouds on the horizon. And it's our job, the job of the Army, the job of you and me, the job of the U.S. military, to prepare in order to keep the peace, or if necessary, win the war. It's our duty to ensure our future leaders have the anti-tank weapons to destroy enemy armor. It's our job to ensure that he or she has the air defense that can stop an enemy UAS swarm or hypersonic ballistic missile attack. It's our job to ensure they have the capability to fight in cyberspace or outer space. It's our job to ensure they can move in next-generation semi-autonomous or robotic ground and air vehicles. It's our job to ensure they can communicate and navigate reliably, and they have the best body armor, along with the best rifle, machine gun, and night vision goggle. And it's our job to ensure they are physically hard enough for the challenges of close quarters combat in complex terrain, and led by officers and sergeants that can fight in all domains against a committed enemy with unprecedented lethality and capability. We can never forget, it's our job to keep faith with Slape, Schur, Vandal, and that kid and his brother from Somerville. Our Army is up to this task, and it's our job to protect and defend this country. And I know we will do it. We will protect and defend our Constitution so that this experiment in liberty that we call the United States of America shall not perish from this earth. It's been an honor of a lifetime to be your Chief of Staff. Thank you. God bless America, and God bless the United States Army.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
America is a peaceful nation, but if conflict is forced upon us, we will fight and we will win. We're powered by the unstoppable force of the United States Army.
As the rigors of combat and the battlefield continue to change, the Army must continue to adapt so that our soldiers continue to be ready today and more lethal tomorrow.
If we adapt to the changing character of war and we embrace the institutional changes we need to implement, then we will continue to be the most lethal fighting force in the world for the next 7 decades and beyond.
With more than 180,000 soldiers stationed throughout the world, today's Army stands ready to fight an enemy anywhere at any time. After 17 years of continuous combat operations, the Army has upheld its stature as the most lethal fighting force in the world. To be ready for the next chapter, the Army must modernize the total force to be able to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars.
We must do better. We can do better. We must exploit our science and technology to create options for a very challenging future battlefield.
To meet the demands of future conflicts, the Army will increase the lethality of our soldiers by working with industry leaders to develop new technologies and capabilities. Soldiers and units will be provided the necessary equipment to fight, survive, and win our nation's wars.
Chief, thanks. Thanks for your wisdom, for your guidance. You very clearly have set the path forward. This association, your association, all those gathered here, we're on that path with you, and we're marching forward with you. And as you have reminded us, we will never break faith with those who continue to serve this nation. We will not break faith with you. Thank you for your leadership and for your service. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief has set the path for us. Another path leads you down to the exhibit floor to see the more than 700 exhibits that are present at today's AUSA annual meeting. I encourage you to get down on that exhibit floor, learn and experience all that the capabilities that this great industrial base has to offer. Thanks all of you for joining us this afternoon for a great lunch. Again, congratulations to all those soldiers of excellence. Thank you for all that you have done. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great Army Day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our luncheon.